All right, we're live. Welcome everyone. I'm here with Matthew from. Do you like the? Are you one of those people that recoil when I use your full name?
Only because my father is the only person that still calls me Matthew, and
Gotcha.
when I hear it, it makes me think like I'm in trouble for something because that your parents always just use your full name when they really have something that they need to tell you about, and you're bad boy Matthew. So I prefer Matt, but if you want to call me Matthew, go ahead.
Matthew Darketh Pathis. You get over here right now. I don't. I'm here with Matt from the Dark Path. So I have several goals, several kind of New Year's resolutions, goals for this year. As bullshit as that time marker is, one of them was going to be starting a distro, which I did yesterday. It's live, groundzerosalem.com. Check it out. It's just me selling used stuff for the most part right now. And the other one was to get on the boat with everyone else and start regularly streaming. I was speaking to Matt before we went live about how I'm a big fan of podcasts and I like conversations. And I kind of miss the quarantine times when a bunch of us would be kind of shit hammered and be talking about all kinds of just random stuff before it got a little bit more streamlined into topics, which is usually the better way to go with it. But it was fun.
Those were good
Eric,
times, and we created a nightmare out there.
we did
with the streaming, but there was nothing else to do in 2020 except
mm-hmm.
talk to your friends on the internet, and now people are still doing it. So
yeah. Absolutely. And actually, come to think of it, Matt, like that was how we all got to be pretty good friends with you because we liked your content. I still don't feel comfortable using that word. It feels so cold, but we liked your videos and stuff. Great taste in music. And I think, all of us old guy YouTubers that were already kind of buddies were like, oh yeah, this Matt guy's got something good going on. I know Ben in particular was like, yeah, his taste in black metal is really good. So when you came down with COVID, the OG first pressing of COVID, we were like, oh, let's get him on and talk to him and wish him well. And
I think I passed out on that initial stream that I joined with you guys because I was still getting over it, and
yeah, I remember that now.
I just slowly just fell asleep, and and thus started the whole thing. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for. There's a lot of that era that's very fuzzy, but yeah, now that you mention it, I think you're right. So I don't know. I'm still. This whole kind of format for me and what I'm going to be doing with this Monday streaming thing is still in its embryonic stages. I'm not sure exactly if I'm going to have particular topics or a thing that I do or topic that I talk about every single time. But I did the thrust of it. The general thing that I want to do is just talk about, why you do your channel, what you're inspired by, how long, first of all, first question, how long have you been doing this for, Matt? It's been what, 3 years, 4 years? Time is really weird to me right now.
Well, first of all, let me just say thank you for inviting me on for your inaugural podcast thing, whatever you want to call it, GZS Mondays or whatever. So
sure.
Cool. Thanks, man. But
yeah,
I started in 2019. So this will be the 4th year doing it. And I started without having a single friend in the YouTube world at all. So it was a very, very slow climb to the proverbial top, I guess. I'm not even at the top, but you know what I mean. Like it just, it was a very slow build for me. But yeah, since 2019, ever since I moved out to California, that's when I started.
And did you start it just out of like not knowing a lot of, because I know that when I started mine, I knew plenty of people, but I was a new dad. I had just bought a house in Salem, Mass, thus the name. It was like to fill a void of this desire to talk shop about tunes. Was it a similar kind of scenario with you?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, when I moved to California from Atlanta, Georgia, and, I've talked ad nauseum about how I don't want to say I was super involved in the scene in Atlanta, but, I knew all the local bands. I was friends with a ton of people there. And one of my day jobs that I had there was with a bunch of metalheads. So like every day I talked about music, with friends at concerts, whatever. Just it was just such a huge part of my life, it seemed like. So when I moved out to California, like that was all over pretty much. And I just felt myself feeling really uneasy because I lost, you know, what I was used to talking about all of the time. And I had kind of been watching a lot of channels like yours and Brain Smasher and Marty Worm and all of these guys, Eric Bauer, like everybody that I have come to be good friends with. You know, I was a fan of everybody's channel before, and I was like, well, these guys seem like they have kind of a similar thing going on. Like, why would you even start a channel like this unless you just miss talking about music with friends? So this was just a way for me to scratch that itch, really. And then from there, it just kind of, it scratched that itch, but it just kind of took on a life of its own, to where now I feel weird if I've not done a video in a long time. Like, I haven't done a video since the beginning of December, because I always take the December off. But like I feel weird, just like I did when I first moved out here, because it's been too long since I've, talked with somebody or something about music.
Yeah, I get I mean, I'll go on very long hiatuses because, like we were discussing earlier, I've been doing it for a couple more years than you have. And I think there's, I believe, I think it was Aaron the Metal Theologian was saying, like, yeah, usually after a year or two, like most people experience some kind of burnout. And I think that's pretty apt. I think it took me a couple of years, but there's been like, I think the longest stretch I've gone is like 2.5 months or something like that, as opposed to that first year where you're just like, want to make a video. You're just making time, anytime. Oh, okay. My kid will be home in half an hour. I'm going to just shoot a quick, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And there's a whole idea of like expanding into new territories. For whatever reason, people love collection updates, and that seems to be what get the most eyeballs. I'm not exactly sure what the psychology of that is. But I mean, you are, I think, are known for doing these really well-researched, well thought out deep dives, which, I feel like, I'd like to do that more. I've been having it on the back burner. I'm like, I should do one of those for the accused, because I'm not a completist. I think that's why I don't do those super often. But those are always really, and you've gotten pretty good like reactions from most of those, haven't you? Or do they not do as well as collection updates?
Well, collection updates definitely get the most views, and I've never really understood why that is either, because those take almost no effort to do, whereas a deep dive, if you are a completist collector scum like I am, you have to go back and listen to everything. You got to make notes. You got to get your thoughts in order. Like, it's a lot more involved. And then you look at the views and only 200 people watched it. And then the collection update that you posted a week or two before has got 1,000 views. And like, it just doesn't make sense. But I think a big part of it is just because I think people like just quick, short blasts of information. Things like the YouTube shorts and TikTok videos and things like that are kind of proof to that statement, I think. So a deep dive, you look at a deep dive and you see a video that's an hour or longer. Most people don't have time for that. And if they do have time for it, they're going to tune in for 15-20 minutes, leave, come back, back and forth. So when I look at a deep dive video that maybe taps out at about 500-600 views, I don't know if that's 500 or 600 different people or just the same core of people who like those deep dives that are taking breaks and coming back and forth. So yeah, it's a thing that I used to drive myself crazy with, trying to figure out what kind of content people actually want versus what they don't. But the people who do like the deep dives, they really, really like them. Like, they give me a lot of positive feedback on it. And when I said that I was done doing this, I got a lot of comments from people saying, no, like, bring it back. So then I brought it back. And then the videos I did had even less views than before. So you just can't, you can't figure it out. There's no figuring that out. My most popular video on my channel is the top 20 albums of 2022. I got 11,000 views in 1 month. It surpassed everything that I've done in 4 years in 1 month. So,
Yeah.
what is it that people want? You just don't know. You don't know how that algorithm works, and you can drive yourself crazy thinking about it, or you can worry about other things that actually matter. So
Yeah, it's weird. I did one of those 2022 videos, and I think it's like probably my style of I'm not a lists guy. I'm not into like ranking. I will talk about a certain number, and I'll even like say like, okay, this is probably my album of the year. I listened to this the most, but it wasn't my particular video. Was like, these are some of my favorites. I'm going to talk about my very favorites on these 2 streams. And I was like, I think it's going to do good. And it's done fine, but it's like does about this average. And I was like, huh. And that whole audiophile thing, like that did pretty well for me, which, I'm a small YouTuber, whatever. It was like it's over 1,000. It's one of my highest videos, which I knew would probably get a little bit of negative reaction, which it did. And like, a lot of engagement, because it's a hot thread or whatever, which is,
right.
I mean, the whole thing starting like kicking off my channel was that records that got me into death metal thing. And that has a lot of views now. And oddly, do you ever have videos that you're surprised? You're like, why is it this one? Like I have a top 20 UK punk records, which usually punk and hardcore like don't get the kind of eyeballs that metal does for whatever reason on YouTube. That thing has like, I haven't checked. That has a lot of views for me. I don't know why exactly, but who knows? Again, you could drive yourself crazy.
I don't know. I mean, I used to think a lot of it had to do with whatever notes you put in the description of your video. So if you happen to be talking about a Salathis album and somebody was really big on wanting to check out Salathis that week, your video might pop up in their search because you had it in the description of your video. But then when I did that top 20 of 22 video, I didn't list a single thing on there, and it's got more views than anything else I've ever done. So like I have no idea how it works. It just does, it's whatever. So
yeah, I don't know. Who knows? I mean, I think some of it can be like a lot of it can be pinned on the algorithm, but I also think that a lot of people put too much stake in what the algorithm actually is.
Oh, for sure.
I think it's just the whims of the people. Like I feel like they're the golden era of being a metal vlogger, like an amateur music reviewer or pundit or whatever on YouTube. Like when Count Blagareth was really huge and Canyon and all that stuff. That was between 2015 and 2017 or something like that. And I think if you were doing what we're doing then, subs really stacked up for me personally. And I don't really give a shit, obviously. They've like, I think I hit 2,000 subs like 2 years ago, and I'm at like 2,400 now or something. I'm like, well, yeah, that's just how it goes. It's the way she goes, boys.
Yeah, I'm only about 300 subs away from you, and again, it was due to that top 20 video. I got like almost 400 subs from that video alone. Now, am I going to have 400 new people willing to tune into this every video? I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. So you grew up in Michigan? Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. Okay. Well, I was born in Colorado, but I only lived there for like a month or two. And most of my young childhood was in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I also lived in Toronto for like half the time because I didn't know I had divorced parents. So, I had to go back and forth between Ann Arbor, Michigan and Ontario, Canada every weekend for a while. So that was a lot of fun. But yeah, I would say Michigan's where I grew up.
Right on. And
long-winded answer to that question. Sorry.
No, it's interesting. I didn't know that you did part-time as a Canadian. And then you lived in Atlanta and then San Diego.
From Michigan, I moved to Chicago. I lived in Chicago, suburbs of Chicago, for about 3 years. And then from there, I moved back to Michigan for college. the first attempt at college. And then from there, I moved to Florida. I was in Florida for 8 years. And then I was in Atlanta for 6. And I'm on year 4 in California right now. So
Damn, journeyman.
I'm a well-traveled individual.
Sounds like me, actually. I mean, I mostly lived in the Northeast, you know, being from Syracuse. I lived in Rochester, which is same thing pretty much. But I also lived in Florida for a spell. I lived in Boston a couple of different times, Maine, and now it's the first time of me living below the Mason-Dixon line. So that's
How are you liking the South so far?
So far, so good. You know, like, I mean, I have my apprehensions about cultural differences down here and all that.
It's a different world where you're at, for sure.
You know, and I think that North Carolina also is different than even South Carolina and Georgia, and every place is different. People down here generally have like pretty good manners and are very polite, which is something that is nice. It's a nice change of pace. You know, that sort of like cold Northeastern rudeness is not really prevalent here. And I don't miss that at all, because I've always kind of prided myself on being relatively personable.
Yeah.
So that is cool, you know. I'm not really seeing tons of like, let's go Brandon, like Gadsden flag type of bullshit either, except way out in the sticks. So that's cool with me, you know, judging on how I lean politically and all that kind of stuff. But people are civil, people are nice, you know. It's pretty good so far. Haven't had, you know, because of what we were talking about earlier and my whole reason for starting my channel, I have the whole family man thing going on, so I don't get out to gigs here very often. I've been here for a few. The metal gigs that we've been to, my wife and I went to Medium Well in Hell, which is like a barbecue / black metal festival in downtown Raleigh. Like, that was awesome. That was packed out, really good bands. Everybody seemed really nice. My friend Tim and I went to go see the Bay Strikes Back tour. I think it was the first show I went to here. That was also like really well attended. So people definitely are into music down here. We got Sorry State Records, you know, like that's a great record store for punk and hardcore and everything. So there's a lot of record stores here as well. So personally, like I'm happy. Like I do miss Salem sometimes, but the place is a tourist trap and you can't get anywhere between August and November. It's just, we were over it. We were ready to go. So,
yeah. Well, where you're at sounds very, very similar to what it was kind of like in Atlanta when I lived there. I mean, Atlanta is not anything at all like the rest of the state of Georgia. I mean, Georgia is what it is, but Atlanta is totally different. But yeah, that southern comfort, southern pride thing, definitely felt that a lot living there. A lot of camaraderie, a lot of cliques. There's definitely, you know, some cliquey stuff going on, but you're going to run into that anywhere. But yeah, the further out into the sticks you would go, the more you would see, you know, Trump paraphernalia everywhere.
Yeah, and you know,
and you would not see that in Atlanta. I mean, Atlanta's 95% African American, so you know,
yeah, and I mean,
there.
It's the same thing everywhere. I mean, that's rural areas everywhere. Like that's what like where like my dad used to live in upstate New York. Like you go like 20 minutes outside of Syracuse, and it might as well be, you know, Louisiana. You know, different climate, but that's about it. It's like same social climate, different climate, I guess. But so one thing that I observed about your channel that I was like, that's cool, because I feel like he's bringing something. Marty to a certain extent also brought this, but you, I think even more so, was like you would talk about industrial music a lot. And my personal relationship was like, that was a genre that I was really into in high school, and I held on to a couple bands, mostly Skinny Puppy. When I want to hear industrial, I listen to that band. Ministry, of course, you know, maybe a few others, but I kind of drifted away from it as a kid. When did that sort of dovetail with your interest in extreme metal, or were you into that first? Did it come later?
In a way, yeah. I mean, I have to trace it all back to, you know, when my family first got cable when I was a kid. So around the time I was, I don't know, 13, 14 years old, something like that. And I was first exposed to MTV. They were still playing a lot of Ministry videos on MTV at that time. So
they sure were.
Yeah, so that was my introduction to industrial. It was all through, Nine Inch Nails and Ministry. And out of the two, I always leaned more towards Ministry just because around that time is when I was getting into, Metallica, Megadeth, and White Zombie and stuff like that. Just all the MTV metal of the day. So that's really where the industrial seeds were planted. Then there was a friend of mine in like a 10th grade biology class. She was really big into industrial, and she used to let me borrow her Industrial Revolution compilations. So I got turned on to Laibach and, bands like that. But I really didn't get really big into industrial until I got into college, because all of my friends were rivet heads, as they were called at the time. So they were really into, Skinny Puppy and KMFDM and Frontline Assembly. And that's really when that stuff started to rub off on me. I didn't really have any metalhead friends. All of my friends were rivet heads. So that's just how it all kind of came together. But yeah, I mean, I would have never said I was a big fan of industrial. I didn't really even know that's what it was called when I was getting into Ministry and Nine Inch Nails. I just thought it was hard rock or a type of metal. I didn't really think it was this whole other thing. So,
sorry, I'm having my tripod's getting weird. There we go. That's fine. All right.
You're losing control, Pat. You're losing control. Keep it together, man.
At least I got the term "my tripod's getting weird" out of it. And another term, again, I haven't heard that in forever. Rivet head. Did you ever frequent goth clubs? Because that was half of the appeal for me. Was
no. I never went out to any of the goth clubs. I've only been to a dance club once in my life, and that was pre-COVID, like just before COVID hit. So 2018, 2019. That was like the one and only time I went to one, and I felt so out of place being there with a couple of metalheads that I knew in Los Angeles, and it's like, yeah, this isn't my scene. So the girls are hot. People are sexy in this place. There's a lot of drugs happening around here. This is not my scene. So
it was never my scene, but I loved it. Like that was like my senior year of high school. Like a bunch of things happened. Like for one, I was straight edge up until then. The summer before that, I broke edge, and I was like partying and stuff and hanging out with people in their 20s. And there's a goth club in Rochester, New York that's still around, called Vertex. It's like a friend of mine posted about it recently, and it's like it's one of the few remaining like purely goth clubs. It's not like a club that has a goth night. It's a goth club. And I used to go there and like sneak out and go there, all at ungodly hours of the night. And then there was another one that closed, but I think it's reopened recently, maybe in a different location. I don't remember, but there was one in Boston called Man Ray, and just going to them was always such a trip for me, because I grew up going to like metal and hardcore shows, and I'd go, and again, attractive females. There was a whole other kind of, subculture around it, like the ways people danced and like the doing this shit. And like, I don't know.
Thanks. No thanks.
it was a good lesson in like, watching how different like tribes operate, I felt. And it also exposed me, not that I went to these like every week or anything, but it would be once every couple of months I'd go to a lot of like new music, because of course I knew Ministry and stuff like that, but like stuff like Alien Sex Fiend and a lot of Peter Murphy's solo stuff, like a lot of the stuff that I didn't know, it kind of like schooled me on some kinds of music, so sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, sometimes I think it's kind of a big misconception that I'm as big of a industrial fan as it seems like I am, because I do talk about it a lot on my channel, but I have my core select bands that I listen to. I don't keep up with that scene. I don't really stray too far out of what my comfort zone is with that kind of music, just because industrial music today is not what it was back in the day. They're just completely different things, and it's just not the same. So
Yeah, well, the thing with
Whereas
me,
metal is always metal, classic
Mhm.
rock, prog rock, those are always what they are. But electronic music, it just changes so much, and you can be as retro as you want with that kind of stuff. It's just different today than when that stuff was coming around. So
yeah, I agree, and I felt that shift like in the late '90s where,
yeah,
well, a lot of it was technology was catching up to this idealized thing that industrial was supposed to be capturing. Like a lot of the imagery and a lot of the lyrics, I feel like in industrial were like inspired by like William Gibson and all these sci-fi writers and movies like Hardware and all that kind of stuff. And then it got to the point where it's like, well, we're there now. And it isn't like that. There's no cyborgs walking around. You know, Lemmy's
right.
not driving a boat. Like, you know, whatever. So I feel like it just kind of, it's almost like a future world at Disney or whatever, where it's like the everybody thought there'd be flying cars with the little circles floating around everything, and we're, you know, in the 21st century, and it's just not like that. There's one newer industrial band. I think they're on $20 spin. They're sort of metallic.
Yeah, Black Magnet.
Black Magnet. I knew it was Black something. I couldn't remember. They're pretty good. I like that, you know.
Yeah, I still need to listen to them. I know Eric and Marty have been singing their praises for a while. I just, I just don't have the time to listen to every single cool thing that comes out.
Yeah.
They're on the list. They're on the list, everybody. Don't worry. But
Yeah.
No, I think that's a good point about like how that scene changed though. And in my opinion, the advent or the advances rather in technology is exactly what killed industrial for me.
Mhm.
That's what made it stop sounding so cool, because back in the day, you really had to work to get those sounds to work. You had to work with real world sound effects and cutting and pasting tape
Tape loops.
together and working with like errors in the technology. And you just don't really have to do that anymore. You just turn on your computer and bleep 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 and you've got 15 albums. So it's just different today. Like the hard work that went into making that music changed into a different type of hard work, and that's computer programming. That's not making music, is the way I kind of look at it. So
Yeah, I think that's right. And I don't know if it's true, because I never bothered researching it, but a friend of mine, when I was getting into, I had already been into like goth and industrial, but I had like a synth pop phase like in the early 2000s, where I was listening to all this crust and grindcore and stuff, and then all of a sudden I was like, I need something else. So I started getting really into New Order and Depeche Mode, which is very closely related to all those genres I just mentioned. But somebody,
sure.
my friend who was a huge fan of that stuff was like, do you know how much crap New Order had to lug on stage when they started? Like, because I think all the synthesizers and samplers and stuff in the early 80s, when they just came out of Joy Division, I think it was a lot of shit they had to do. Like it was very, very convoluted and hard to pull together. But I would assume like logic would dictate like that would be the case, but I don't know the ins and outs.
Well, yeah, you can read interviews with like any of the OG people from the industrial scene, and they'll tell you like half of those cool sound effects that you're hearing on the record, those were like mistakes in the studio, things that happened that weren't supposed to happen, but they thought it sounded cool, so they left it in there. That's the magic that got lost in that electronic music scene.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
On a similar thing, since we're talking genres here and music tastes and all that kind of stuff, is there anything like in the recent past couple years that bands or genres or anything that you're just totally burnt out on at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, black metal as a whole has kind of lost me the past few years. I mean, there's a lot of good black metal out there, but I don't care. You know what I mean? Like I don't care. Like I think there's certain bands that will come out and I'll listen to it. I'll be like, oh, that was cool. Like that Moonlight Sorcery band. I thought that they put out some really cool stuff this past year. But I don't know. It's just it's one of those things where like the fan base has killed the music for me in a way. And the older I'm getting, the more insufferable I'm finding most black metal fans out there. And
I've kind of always found them insufferable.
I mean, that is a massive generalization. And if you love black metal and you're not a complete piece of shit, I apologize. You are not the person I'm talking about, but you all know the types of people that I'm talking about. Just these insufferable people that think black metal is law. They're 22 years old and can't see beyond their corpse painted face. Like that's not what life is all about to me. So the older I get, the less I care about stuff like that, about gatekeeping and all that kind of shit. I don't care. You know, I'm too old for that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean,
but yeah, black metal is definitely a scene where, you know, I loved it growing up. That was my main thing. That was one of the, you know, when I got into metal, I started like everybody else did in my age group, you know, Metallica, Megadeth, Pantera, Slayer. And then from stuff like that, I went straight into black metal, and I was in black metal for a really long time, but I hardly ever pull for a black metal record anymore, unless it's like a really weird one.
Yeah.
Like the weirder, the better is kind of where I go with that kind of stuff. But at that point, it's not really even black metal anymore, is it? It's something else. So
at one point, I feel like that was black metal's strength. Like I was talking about, I've been back into the podcast lately, and I'll shout them out here. I'm sure they have plenty of listeners anyway, at least like in an underground sort of way. But there's a podcast out of Rochester, younger for us. Like I think they're in their early 30s, but they're, you know, music studiers of music, and they're punk dudes. The name of the podcast is Kings of Punk, which is a reference to a Poison Idea song. But they had like, here's beginners black metal stuff. And I'm like, okay, I've heard this a million times, but let's hear it from punk kids, you know, like, let's see what they actually know. Let's see what they get right, what they get wrong. Not that I'm a scholar for black metal at all, but they had really honest view of it. And they're like pretty funny, especially talking about Varg and all that kind of stuff. But they also brought up that like, that was at least at one point, one of black metal's strengths, because you can go really weird with it. It's harder to do that with death metal and grindcore and stuff, but you can be really soft and melodic. You can be noisy. You can weave in industrial. You can weave in techno and pop. Like, and It seems like, I don't know, because I am not the black metal guy. These are not the droids you're looking for, but it seems like people are like not really into pushing the boundaries anymore. They're like death metal. It seems like a lot of like just pushing certain tropes. And like, I think it's cool that there's been an upshoot of symphonic black metal lately, because I kind of missed out on that. Like I liked one Emperor record. I liked the first two Cradle of Filths. And then I was just kind of like, man, I'm going back to listen to Crust and Grind. This was like in the late 90s.
Well, symphonic stuff is what I cut my teeth on. I mean, Emperor, Dimmu Borgir, Cradle of Filth, Lambonic Art, you know, Odium, all that kind of stuff. That was my bread and butter for a long time. And, you know, that was back when I was young enough to have that opinion of, if it's not black metal, it's crap. You know, I don't even want to hear you, brah. Like, not my thing. And, you know, that's when I was in my early 20s, and that's where those kinds of opinions belong and where they should stay, is in your early 20s or younger. So
yeah, for sure. It's just weird because we're at a time, not just with that particular genre, but with all genres, where a lot of it is just, it's a period study of a certain time and place. And Beard Cog here in the comments was like, yeah, I'm tired of the cavernous death metal stuff.
I was going to point that out too. I kind of agree with that. I see cavernous death metal being the next thing that, like, God, really another band that just sounds like Disma or whatever band you want to pull out of your butt. Like, I don't know, where's the innovation? And that's why I like bands that just go really weird with it, whether it's in black metal or death metal or what. Just give me something weird, because at least it holds my interest. And that's why a lot of my top albums of last year were weird. So
I even feel like the cavernous thing is already like 2 or 3 or 4 years even like out of style, because there was like incantation worship for quite a while there. I think previous to that there was like the Swedish sound was popular. Lately people seem to be borrowing from different eras of Morbid Angel depending on the band.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of this is cool and it's well done. And I'm just looking for songwriting that's good. You know, I'm old and jaded. I want riffs I can remember. You know, that's why that's why I like the Undeath record so much. I'm like, I haven't had a new death metal riff stuck in my head in years at this point. That's why like that record's so good to me. You know,
I mean, that record is fine, but to me, like, I don't know, like Undeath, everybody loves that band, but I don't, I'm just gonna go listen to, you know, that band or this band or
sure.
Cannibal Corpse, or like I don't need to hear a band of 24-year-olds who are playing like the bands that I loved when I was 24, I guess
Right.
is what I
Well,
mean. But
and if I could push back on that a little bit, I do like that band and a few other bands simply because it might be a Frankenstein monster of a couple of different bands, but I'm really super not into doing into the whole worship thing. It sounds like exactly like like the Bolt Thrower thing lately, you know, like other than Hellshock, who are a bunch of like crust punks that sound a lot like Bolt Thrower, but not completely like them. And they have a whole discography leading up to this point that doesn't sound like that. You know, I'm just done with like bands that completely replicate bands that did it better before. At least Undeath like have a really good knack for writing catchy stuff. And yeah, it does sound a lot like Cannibal Corpse in my opinion, but there's other stuff in there too. And that's
yeah, I think I definitely need to spend more time with Undeath. Just when I first heard them, like I bought their albums blindly just because everyone was saying how great they were, and I was like, yeah, I'll check them out. They're super cheap.
yeah.
And yeah, you know, I'd listened to them a couple of times and said, yeah, this album sounds like Cannibal Corpse, and this album sounds like Morbid Angel. I already have those albums, and I wrote it off, and I probably need to spend some more time with it. I know a bunch of people are rolling their eyes at me right now saying,
Yeah.
old man shaking fist at sky doesn't sound like the band I grew up with, man. But
I mean, it doesn't matter. Like I can say this shit all I want, and I'll probably, we were talking about, you know, I'll probably be cutting back even more on buying new stuff this year just to, well, I'll be buying 2 copies of it to sell one in my distro, but I'm still going to check this stuff out. I'm still a maniac, quote unquote. I am crazy maniac for the metal.
yes.
But like, you know, another good example, like, even though they're definitely part of the whole autopsy kind of thing, autopsy worship or whatever, that Molder is also so good. Like that definitely was in there for a record I listened to a lot this year. I'm not sure if I threw it into one of my lists or not. I probably should have, but I resisted that band for a long time. I'm like, it's so simplistic. Do I need to? But the latest one, the stuff before that didn't really win me over as much, but that new Molder record won me over. But whatever. Let's see.
We're just a couple of old men complaining about music here. Those of you that are watching, so don't listen to us.
Yeah, exactly. Like what you like, you know. Yeah, I haven't heard that Phobophilic Ben commented there. I do want to check that out as well. What's evergreen for you, Matt? What can you throw on at any time? What are you not sick of ever?
Judas Priest. I mean,
yep.
I mean, just the classic stuff. I'm always happy to throw on Ceremony of Opposites by Samael. I mean, I can listen to that any day of the week, no matter what time of day. Tiamat's Wild Honey, pretty much anything from the early Tiamat days I could put on. Yeah, I mean, it's the stuff that you cut your teeth on. You know, those are the things that you will always return to. But I'd say Judas Priest. Like if I'm struggling, if I'm sitting in my car trying to find something to put on, you know, I'm not a Spotify guy, but
right.
I do listen to music through YouTube Music. And
Me too.
If I don't feel like just putting something on random and I can't think of what I want to listen to, just a Judas Priest playlist. That's good enough for me. So
the big one for me lately has been Thin Lizzy, because I'm at work a lot and I work with other people, and like sometimes if it's late or if it's busy, I don't give a shit if I bum somebody out with my music choices. But honestly, like, you know, I work in a hospital environment and around a lot of emergency room patients, so it's stressful enough. I don't really need to be listening to like NASM or something while I'm working like around like a trauma scenario. So like, you know,
Man, you'll kill someone if you do that. Don't listen to NASM when you're trying to shoot radiation at a person, man.
Exactly. So I find that I'll go for like a lot of my non-metal tastes, of which I have enough. You know, I like a lot of like late 60s reggae / ska stuff and soul from that era, as well as Thin Lizzy just ticks off a lot of boxes for me. You know, it covers like that 70s rock. It covers the twin leads of metal that no doubt they had such a big influence on Iron Maiden. You know, like Phil Lynott like had a real soulful approach to like a lot of his songwriting. Some of his shit gets kind of schmaltzy and like, you know, AOR kind of, which, you know, I'm growing more of a soft spot for the older I get, which is alarming. Thanks a lot.
Speaking of Thin Lizzy, did you ever get into these guys?
Oh yeah. Yeah. That record's perfect. I love Slough-Egg. Yeah, actually what's funny about Slough-Egg is it wasn't metal people that got me into that band. For some reason, all the like people that I was involved with in the Syracuse hardcore scene in the mid 2000s, like there was a bunch of guys that played in, it wasn't a straight up Oi band, but it was heavily influenced by a lot of like Oi and like Blitz and bands like that. This band called We the People, who are like part hardcore, part Oi, part Thin Lizzy. And all the guys in that band loved Slough-Egg. It was like the one metal band that they liked. And I'd never heard of them before, but you know, all my friends are pretty nerdy too. And a lot of that stuff was like based on those 2000 AD comics, the Traveler stuff and all that, which I know a modicum about. I barely know anything about that shit. But my friends, that particularly the singer for that band, We the People, was a big comic book guy and was like, oh yeah, it's got stuff inspired by these comics. And I'm like, wow, this is, and I've had like a lot of metal dry periods during my life and stuff where I've been, because my whole like pedigree, as most people know that watch this channel and you know, is I was always a metal fan, but I wasn't really involved in the metal scene much, like in terms of like in real life stuff. So I was a hardcore kid and punk kid always, and I had periods where like during that time when I was friends with that band, I was mostly into, I listened to most of the stuff I listened to was like Husker Du and New Model Army and what else? A lot of like a little bit of indie rock, even just via osmosis of the people I worked with, and a lot of 80s hardcore that was like straight up no metal kind of hardcore. So that being like kind of tossed in the mix was really refreshing. I was like, man, this is catchy, well-written shit. This band is awesome. So I need to get into some Hammers of Misfortune too, because I know that there's like a shared member or two between those two bands, I guess. Mm-hmm. And I know that stuff's really good too, but yeah, I mean, Slough-Egg, definitely that record is probably my favorite of theirs right there.
That's what most people say. Everybody says Traveler is the best out of all of them. I have
Down Amongst the Dead Men's really good too.
That's what I was just gonna say. Like, I really like that one and the one right before it, Twilight of the Idols. That one's really good too. That one is like total Thin Lizzy, but yeah, good stuff. Definitely love the Slough-Egg. Slough-Egg, however you say it.
Yeah,
good stuff.
Great shit. I'm trying to think if I have any other. Just to show my hand here, tip my hand. I'm new at this, so I wrote questions. I have
what
topics.
This had a plan to it. You made notes to talk to me.
It's weird.
What is going on?
Well, one question, and this is very general, and we've already kind of touched upon this, at least talking about what we do here with making these silly heavy metal record videos, is what is up with the channel these days? I know you said you took December off.
Yeah.
What can we expect as we voyage down the dark path in 2023?
Well, to be honest, I don't have a really good answer for that. My plan was to do exactly what you're doing, trying to get back into more streaming and stuff, just because it is fun to interact with people. I get tired just talking to myself to a camera about what I'm listening to sometimes. So it's definitely more fun to talk to people about it. I just can't do it for hours on end. You know, that's the only thing when it comes to the streaming with me. I have too much other stuff going on, and I'm a little bit OCD. So I get a little stir crazy if a stream goes on for a little bit too long. But that was a plan for this year. I want to do some live deep dives. One of the series that I'm planning is called Live Discographobia, and I want that to be a conversation like this with me and somebody else doing a deep dive on a band that we love and just go on about it. I don't know if you happen to catch it, but the one that I did in October with Marty Worm and Dennis from Analog Archives, we all got together and talked about Skinny Puppy for a couple of hours and had a lot of fun doing that. And that was kind of the impetus for thinking about doing a live deep dive series for 2023.
Actually, should mention this. Dennis, actually, I want to, Dennis, I know you're watching. I am going to get back to you about doing that new Renaissance deep dive. It's in the back of my brain now that I'm doing this regularly. We should get at that soon. But yeah, that was a good deep dive. Like, those are great. I think those definitely work well with more than one person.
Yeah, and since we are talking to Dennis, hi Dennis, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, buddy.
If you we had talked about it before, but maybe doing a live deep dive on necrophagia, I think that would be fun, man. Hit me up for that one of these days. But yeah, outside of the doing some live deep dives, I'm gonna move away from doing collection updates. I'm just going to have a stack of music that I talk about, and who cares if it's new to the collection or not. I'm just going to talk about what I'm listening to. So that's going to kind of replace the collection update. I'm curious how that will do, if it will do as well as something titled collection update or not. Outside of that, just kind of freewheeling it. I kind of just want to talk to more people in person, or not in person, but like how we're doing this. I kind of would like to do more of that for 2023, and that's really the only plan I have so far. So
cool. And you've been getting into woodworking. I've
been into woodworking for a long time. I just only recently got back into it because I own my own home now and I have a garage, so I've been able to actually do that. And speaking of that, I have to show you this, so bear with me for a moment. My wife thought that I looked absolutely ridiculous in the garage yesterday when I was working on stuff. I don't know if you can see this. She took this picture of me.
Nice.
Because I've got safety glasses on, a face mask, and I'm wearing this obituary hoodie, and she just thought I looked completely ridiculous, so she took that photo of me while I was.
You look like an angel.
Yes,
you look like a little baby angel with a helmet.
Well, yeah, I've been I made a workbench out there. I made a set of coasters. I whittled a dagger for I'm trying to make like a LARPing version of Clue, the board game Clue. I always wanted like actual knife, an actual candlestick, an actual rope for that game. So that's a project that I'm working on.
That's rad, dude.
So I've got the dagger, I've got the knife dagger, whatever you want to call it, made. I still gotta make all the other pieces, but yeah, just tinker around. This time of year in California, it's actually a little bit cold, and when I say cold, it's like 69 degrees outside. So it's
nice,
cold to us, but not to the rest of the country. But the other half of the year, it's way too hot to do anything outside. So this is the best time for me to just hang out in the garage and do stuff. And that was the big reason why the channel took a break for December, because I just wanted to be outside working on stuff. So
I'm in a similar boat. I actually, Amanda got me a table saw, which I put together, but I haven't used yet because, and now I really want to get out there. I have a garage filled with stuff. My stepdad moved down in Florida and wanted to get rid of a bunch of stuff. And he was like, do you want some furniture? It's like a lot of outside, like wicker furniture and stuff. And I was like, yeah. And we have a big garage, but it's got enough room for all this crap in the cars. And there's like no room for woodworking. So I really need to get on that because I want to make some shelves and stuff,
That's what we did with our garage. Like, our garage has a tiny little area for like tinkering around in, and you can park both of your cars in there. But in order to do woodworking and to do fun stuff, the cars have been parked in the driveway for the past couple of months.
Yeah,
and
we have ample room in our driveway, so there's no real excuse.
Yeah, same with us. So it's just, in the summer, it can get up to over the hundreds here.
Sure, yeah, same
so
here.
no, cars are going to be in the garage when that season is here. So
for sure.
Yeah,
cool. All right, well, this has been a good chat. I think this is good. You want to call it?
Yeah, we can call it. What have you been up to lately, man? This is you've been asking me all these questions. How have you been?
Oh, I've been pretty good. Like,
that's cool.
like I said.
All right, well, that's the end of the stream, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and this is a lot of fun, and I appreciate you inviting me on.
The wry wit of Matt Dark Path.
That's what people tune into the Dark Path for. If it's not for greased up, sexy saxophone playing men, it's for the dry wit, the dry wit,
or very wet wit.
Yeah, one of the two.
Yeah, I mean, I've been fine. I've just been doing my thing. I like this Monday thing is my idea. I want to try to have some sort of consistency thing that I feel obligated to do, because like we discussed, it's been 6.5 years, if not more, of me doing this. The weekly collection update thing is it's fun to do. I like talking about music. Last year I tried a few things with like that thrash video, trying to be a little bit more historical and informative and that kind of thing. I'd like to do that more, those projects for me. I'm very into the editing stuff these past couple of years, and it's really fun putting together all these goofy clips and everything. I don't know.
That editing is what I have zero time for. Like me and technology are so like diametrically opposed. I can't sit. I can barely figure out the editing program that I use for my videos, which came free with Windows. Like I even have a hard time with that. So it's not for me, but
it's been a learning curve. Like, I don't think I'm anywhere on the level of like Rick or Trez or anybody that like clearly, has had some real training.
No, Rick should just, officially be the YouTube thumbnail guy for all of us, because nobody can do them better than Rick. So shout out to Rick at the Dreadful Minutes.
Big shout out.
He knows what he's doing. So
my goal this year is the distro, and it'll probably be a while because it's a financial burden, but there's a few demos from the Syracuse era of like this metallic hardcore stuff that I like, pre At the Gates Worship emo singing metalcore, like real metalcore, basically straight edge kids playing death metal riffs from like the mid 90s. A few demos that I love where it would be a passion project, but I think they would actually sell, if it not at least with like my old buddies and stuff, that I'd like to reissue on cassette first, and then eventually maybe one-sided LPs. That's kind of my dream. That'll be a while. We'll see if that actually happens. I was looking at pricing. It's not terrible for small runs of single-sided LPs. Like, it's like a couple grand, like it's not too bank breaking, but right now I'm just trying to do this small, humble distro thing that's a glorified Discogs page. It's just a different kind of thing because I don't want to deal with Discogs fees and Discogs buyers.
That's the best way to start. I mean, everybody I know that runs a record label, that's how they started. It was by running a distro. And I've long wanted to start a new record label. I used to have a record label a long time ago, but it was garbage. And now that I'm older, wiser, have about $3 more in my pocket than I did back then, I've always thought about it. But that YouTuber S&T Young, have you seen any of his videos? He posted a video, or not a video, he posted something on Instagram the other day where he was flexing some tapes, and there were a bunch of tapes released by Dark Path Records. And I was like, what the hell? and I looked them up. They're like from Indonesia or Singapore or something like that. But I was like, damn it, that's the end of that. So.
Now that I think of this, I've been meaning to ask you this. It was one of these questions that flittered across my brain pan and then just dissipated before I wrote it down. What is the song? Did somebody write the song for your intro for you, or is that from an actual band? Or
That is from an actual band, band out of Virginia, I believe, called Earthling. They have an album. They have an album called Dark Path. The name of the song is Dark Path, and the intro to the song is them saying we're on a dark fucking path. So that's what I used, and that's what I stole that whole thing from them. So props to Earthling from Virginia.
Okay. Yeah. Recently I had somebody be like, dude, I don't know much about punk and hard. I think it was Life Eternal. It was like, I'm new to like a lot of punk and hardcore stuff. What's the band in your intro? And I got to be like, it's my old band. which is, I mean, whatever. I can't take credit. I didn't play it. I just sang in that band. I didn't write any of the music. I've never been able to play any instruments, but it worked for an intro. I also, another goal for soon, and speaking of editing for me, is I really want to make a new intro. Probably one that isn't quite as long.
I don't know. I like your new intro, but I have to say I do miss the extended scene from Mazes and Monsters that you have with Tom Hanks. I like that. My Huckleberry is still there at the very end, but I like your original. I like your original one. And Laps 9 Continuum is asking me my intro video from last year. Yes, that was from Lilith's Embrace by Ancient, but I change up my intro video every year. So this year's intro video is going to be from another terrible black metal music video, and you will see it when that comes out. So,
well, that's and that's the thing. Like I feel like I had that Tom Hanks intro for so long. I can't believe I never got dinged for any kind of monetary thing, but I think nobody remembers that movie.
Well, Mazes and Monsters, I think, is in the public domain anyway. Just I think whoever made that movie lost the rights to it. So
I mean, it was an after school special that was like propaganda against Dungeons and Dragons, you know.
Right. What you should do for, if you do make a new intro, you got to have that scene where he's crying about like playing Dungeons and Dragons, where he's just so overwhelmed, he's like at the pier and just
he's on the payphone calling. It's been a while since I've watched it. I own it on DVD. I don't think it's official, but whatever. He's on the payphone freaking out because he stabbed like a homeless guy. He saw him as one of those rubber suit monsters and stabbed him. And he's like, there's blood on my knife. Why can't I remember? It's complete drama material. It's so
it's amazing. Right. It's amazing. Yeah. But actually you were the one that encouraged me to make an intro video for my stuff. I don't know if I ever gave you proper credit for that, but you were the only YouTuber at the time that had an intro video out of anybody that I watched. And I was like, I could steal that idea. So I did.
It's helpful. I want to say there are a few people that did. Ross Hodo had a pretty nice intro, and there are a couple other people that did. But yeah, it wasn't as common at the time, at least with small timers, you know, like me. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot you can do. I think I do have the entire Mazes and Monsters movie downloaded. I can probably do a lot more. There's a lot you can do with that movie. One thing I got sick of though was, I mean, people are new to the channel and I don't want to turn them away by being snarky, and I always appreciate new viewers, but man, did I get sick of answering that question. Like with that old intro, like, what is a movie from? And I'm like,
like, how do you not know, man?
Like at least 20 to 30 times people have asked me that. It's
okay. Like you can tell it's Tom Hanks. Just go to Wikipedia and look up and see what movie you think it probably was. It was Mazes and Monsters, people.
Yeah, is there
my clips, like I think the first one that I did was with that Arcanum music video, Frava Gulen, whatever it's called. That was the first one I used, and then I used Nightmare by Venom. Then I did Ancient, Lilith's Embrace, and just, you know, heads up to everybody, the new one's going to be from Hecate Enthroned, so just be on the lookout for that. So,
oh boy, yeah. I think I know what
you know exactly what video I'm talking about, and of course, that is my new intro for 2023. You will see it within time, people.
I like that band. Like the video's ridiculous, but like, I mean, they're just doing like early Cradle of Filth worship.
Cradle worship and doing funny faces, trying to look all like hard and evil, but they're all like 15 years old, so it doesn't work.
Yeah, that should be fun. Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I have a lot of those. I used them for a while, for a couple of videos, but it just I did a video that was heavily edited like a few years ago where I was talking about new demo releases, and I figured since they were new bands that were on Bandcamp and weren't even on labels, that I wouldn't get dinged, and it got dinged on like demo tapes on like Iron Lung Records and stuff. I'm like, how is this? And I don't care. Like, I don't make any money off of this, but I was like, when stuff gets demonetized, it just definitely gets a lot less views. So I was kind of bummed. But during the time that I made that video, I just searched creepy public domain videos, and it was all these like really weird, a lot of videos from like the beginning of movies, the beginning of cinema, from like the early 20th century, like the era of like Nosferatu. There's all this like Faust stuff and like really weird cartoons. One thing that I explored, if you're ever looking to go down a weird wormhole for any reason whatsoever, is look up disturbing PSAs if you haven't, just like public, especially European ones, like public service announcements. There's OSHA ones like where people actually get mutilated. It's like borderline faces of death shit. I was like, wow.
Oh yeah, I used to work in the construction fall protection industry years ago, and I've seen a lot of horrific OSHA videos. They're pretty terrible. Especially there's one where there was a guy who fell down a mountain, and it showed him tumbling down the mountain. Like dead as shit by the time he hit the ground, right? But I remember in the safety class, someone was like, "Did he survive?" Like, no,
no.
That's why we're watching the video on it. So yeah. No, I don't think I need any of that in my life, Pat. But thanks for offering though.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is like, I don't know if you were like an edgelord. I mean, we're both aging metalheads. I'm sure we were edgelords at some point in our lives. I know I was, but I had that period, in my early 20s when I was like, oh, serial killers, which is funny because it's like mainstream shit now. Yeah. But, and I'd be like, oh, there's that guy, JP Whitkin, that did the art that was used for the Punch and Stench record, where it's like actually one guy's head split to look like they're kissing. Like I had a bunch of his artwork and stuff. And I was really into really, really fucked up movies. And like, now I'm just like, I just want to watch like DreamWorks movies with my kid. Like, let's just watch.
I just watch old reruns of Parks and Recreation, and I can't handle the traces of death stuff. So yeah, when I was younger, we any metalhead that says they never were an edgelord, they're probably not accurate. Yeah, I mean, I think we all were at a certain point in our lives, but we all grow up, and after a while, I don't need that kind of stuff in my life. So
yeah, for sure.
Reality is hard enough. So,
well, also I work, like I said, like in an emergency room situation. Yeah. Like I get enough of that.
Yeah, your life is gore. Like gore metal is your life. So.
Yeah, I mean I don't work at a level 1 trauma center anymore. I did when I lived in Boston. I worked at Brigham and Women's. That was pretty gnar, but yeah, I mean, I'm good with all that.
Well, to bring it full circle, I currently work in the manufacturing industry, nuts and bolts and rivets. So, hey, rivet head right there. So there you go.
Right on. You're an actual rivet head now.
I'm an actual rivet head. I make small metal parts for a living, or I manage the projects that use those parts rather. But yeah.
Is that why you're not as into industrial these days? You are legitimately industrial.
I live it. I live it. No, it's just like what we talked about earlier. And the industrial today is not the industrial of yesterday. But
it's funny. I remember. It's funny that the random shit you remember from like watching TV when you're a kid. But I don't think it was 120 minutes. I think it was Headbangers Ball. It was one of those. They're interviewing Al Jorgensen before he completely went off the deep end, and it was like, so what's the industrial scene all about? Like, who are you friends with? He's like, there's no industrial scene. He's like, I don't call up Trent Reznor to come over to my house and do spot welding. That was really, really funny.
It's like I call him over to do heroin, but not to do spot welding,
Yeah,
you know.
right. Yeah, it's weird. There's a lot of animosity, it seems like, between everything to do with Wax Trax and the industrial stuff that was blowing up in Chicago and like the punk scene. Because at one point, like Wax Trax Records at one point was just like a punk record store.
Yeah.
And I watched a documentary on the Chicago punk scene, and like whenever the people talking about the record store brought up the record store, at least one or two people were like, yeah, before they got sucked into that front 242 shit. Like, geez, okay. There seemed like a lot of like, I think the industrial, probably what I'm guessing, judging by the way people are, regardless of whatever they're into, I think the industrial people probably tried to poo-poo punk as something of the past. So it seems like I've heard that too from people I've known that have lived there as well. Like there's a lot of like kind of this in terms of like just talking shit about each other and stuff.
Well, that's how it is anywhere with any kind of scene. There's always got to be some kind of shit to talk about. So
oh yeah, yep.
Let the kids have at it.
Yep, you're not going to see a paradigm shift out of like high school mentality anywhere, no matter what.
Well, not until you, hopefully, once you get into your late 30s, into your 40s, you give that kind of stuff up. But you never know. You never know.
You never know. You never know. Some people never escape.
Some people don't. That's true.
Not us though. We're
us.
Cool.
No, we're evolved. We're adults. So
yep. There's nothing
we have it all figured out. We have it all figured out, Pat. We are
not
perfect.
In a state of arrested development at all.
Not at all. We are perfect in every way, and we don't take anything too seriously. Now, do we?
Not clutching to a childhood at all. It's fine. Anyway,
let's stop right there. Let's stop ourselves right there.
Let's call it. All right, Matt. Well, thanks for having doing the whole smashing the champagne thing on the ship with this new series I'm doing here. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, man. This was fun.
All right. Well, take care. I'll be talking to you probably right after this in chat or whatever. But all right. I'm gonna leave this to end broadcast. That's right. Okay.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for hanging out.
Everybody for watching. All of you. It's like 35 people at one point. That's great. All right. Peace out.
We're still live. Did you hit the right button?